Go ahead and call the meeting to order. Start with a roll call. McKee here. Council members Lanterman and Friedrich are excused, and Behrenkamp
Here.
Nichols
Here.
Perfect. Then we'll jump right into it. Scheduled items. So we had the tours of the two facilities this morning. Where'd Jay go? There he is. Anything you wanted to comment on those?
So if I could propose a way for the time that we have, Mr. Mayor.
Go for it.
So first, I think it might be helpful just to go around for everybody that's in the room to introduce themselves so that you understand who's with us. And then following that, my recommendation would be that we could go on some lessons learned from the site. And I just want to try and capture that because that's helpful feedback. And then I'd like to have the opportunity for staff to try and explain, you might hit on it in your comments, but of why staff recommended that these were the sites and comparing some contrasts some things.
Okay.
Because there's some things about these sites that we do not want to do. There's some things about these sites that we'd like to do. And there's some things that we saw in other sites that were not included in this. There's just some limitations in time. And so if that's an acceptable agenda.
Works for me.
Okay, so if we start here and just introduce yourselves, please.
Yeah, I'm Megan Winberg, I'm with Crossing Construction.
Paul Michelle with KV Group.
Grace Jack with the KV Group.
Michael Healy with KV Group. Joe Baker, Utility Superintendent. Ryan Burns, Deputy Director of Public Safety.
Matt Selmeyer, Finance Director.
Kevin Madison, Public Works Director.
Natalie Davis McEwen, Community Development Director.
Alicia Williams, Assistant City Administrator. Deb Johnson, City Clerk.
Jay Tobin, City Administrator.
Tom McKee, Mayor.
Dean Behrenkamp, council member, and just real quick before I get to Jeremy, I will need to leave at 1:30.
Noted.
Jeremy
wait.
Nichols, resident.
Is that going to be a problem?
We can work.
I think you can. I think you can.
Yeah, we can make it.
I have,
We will be good stewards.
my business has something going on.
Cool.
So with that in mind, Mayor and council members, would like to get your feedback first on the Chan campus, your observations and your takeaways that you think are important that council see, that you saw, you liked, you didn't like, so that we can take note of that. And so it might be easiest if we just start go left to right.
Which way is left?
That way, that way.
My
This
left
way,
to
that way.
right.
Yeah, if you guys want to start, that'd be great, because it's been a little bit longer since I've been there.
Sure. I will say, from an aesthetic appeal, I liked the overall finish choices that they made in Chanhassen. I liked the idea of a view from the council chamber out into the heart of the city. I think we have an advantage here in that we will have a more pastoral view than they were able to achieve just with where they're located. I appreciated the integration with other parks and other points of interest that they were able to achieve by having a bigger footprint around their site, which we would not be able to capture, unfortunately. It felt like it was a little bit, when you first walk in, I felt like from a cost perspective there was a lot of wasted space in that long central hallway that wasn't put to use other than a sense of grandeur. So I feel like that might be an opportunity for us to look for some savings. I felt like the fit and finish in the staff area seemed like it was at about the right level, where it's not, AAA, maybe it's like A or B, but still modern and clean. It seemed like they had a better ambiance than what we saw at the other site. They had complained of the other side about a lot of noise transfer and things carrying between offices, and it's hard to focus. It seemed like they had better design and construction in Chanhassen. It also seemed like they had a good ambient acoustic system to try to damp down crosstalk from people in the same office bay. I liked the inside-outside design, having a lot of porch features and ways to get outside for short periods of time. That seems like it would be a good quality of life addition.
instead of tailoring my words after him, I too thought it was just a beautiful place, those kind of things, but some excessive spaces, grandiose look, whatever. I think we're a very conservative city. I think I was talking to Jeremy on the way back since we rode together, the rural feel, those kind of things. I love what we're doing with our park building. It would be nice if we could do the same thing for City Hall, and I'll make it real simple. It'd be really nice to see a barn, two-level barn with porches, with patios, with those kind of things, and create it that way. I'm one that's not the brick and mortar, while it's functional and we need it, I'd rather have that little bit of detail, the rural side, and that's where you guys are gonna come in and dream up something that'll really turn out nice. So, the council chambers seemed, in my mind, not quite right. You're off center, you're kittywampus. I think somebody made the comment, you've got some people sitting behind you. I'd rather everything be out front.
Some people sitting behind. Trying to remember that one. So there's
The dais is here,
Yeah.
and then there's some more
kind of
people that can sit back
Yeah,
here. There's
okay.
people sitting, I'd rather it be, I thought the council chambers were great for, staff and how that was laid out.
Mhm.
Slightly move that middle island a little bit, like Jay, I think, was talking about, presentations, those kind of things. You still need that space, but I think those are good. I very much agree with Jeremy and everything else. We're gonna have some very beautiful views if we use the wetland north of City Hall to look out onto. There's so many distractions down there. You've got the amphitheater going in, everything that's done. It's a huge campus, and that's all nice to have. The senior center was great, or that room, I think, was great. I too liked the administration side of how that was laid out and such. I'd like to see more of a easier accessible mechanical chase related to IT, heating and cooling, those kind of things, instead of all these little pockets, closets and stuff. I don't know if that's something that could be run. I didn't realize that the sheriff was located in City Hall too. That collaboration would be a neat function, and I don't know if there's benefits or monies that could be done there too.
So that's because that is their contracted police force.
Okay, all right.
So that is their police department.
That's their police department. I needed to understand that a little bit better. It's neat to be part of this process. I think the number that was given, Jay, was it 33 million, 32 million on that?
31.3 million with 5.8 million in soft costs,
Okay.
so roughly 37.
And built when?
37 million built. It was just, they opened in September.
Okay.
So started construction 18 months ago, roughly.
So that's pretty good.
The underground parking, obviously, very much needed. I can't wait to see our staff tell us what their thoughts are of that sharing and those kind of things. I'd really like to see, and I'm excited to hear about that sharing of common areas and stuff between the police and the rest of the staff in the city. I'm starting to migrate into the New Hope facility and stuff. It was a little disappointing that in New Hope doesn't sound like they can commingle very well in the workout room and
I don't
stuff
want to
like
jump to
that.
New Hope yet.
Yeah,
So
okay.
I wanna-
It's great. I'd like to see it'll be a little bit more conservative. I don't think we need that huge, tall ceiling in the council chambers and such. I think that may be wasted space, but I'm open to a lot of things right now. The glass, the openness, the feel, the views out of all of the windows are all great things, and the dreamer that is thinking up all of those things, it's great. The main hallway, looking out one way and then turn around looking out the other, you've got views and vistas that are pretty cool. It makes you think how cool of a city they live in, and they see a lot of their things like that. So I'm just rattling off a bunch of stuff. Tell me to shut up if you want me to.
Very helpful.
A lot of the stuff that you guys have said is what I remember from when I was out there. And I'm probably gonna mix in from some of the other site visits we did, but I did like their chambers. The more I thought about it, the more I started to like it. The one thing I didn't necessarily like about it was and I can't remember if this was New Hope or someone else that had the overflow room that was like,
They didn't have an overflow.
okay, whichever one it was that had the overflow room, where it was like, you walked in there, I remember, I think I was listening to Alicia, and I was like, this chambers feels way too small for a city like this, like it's half the size of this room, but then you have the overflow room that you can multi-purpose.
That's actually New Hope. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, so I like that, but kind of almost if you mix and match some of the features and layout of, I also think the New Hope one was almost exclusively set up better for broadcast viewing than live viewing.
Yep.
And if you kind of mixed it more with like the Chanhassen one, which did have some maybe better live viewing experience for residents, maybe some changes like Dean was mentioning in terms of the layout specifically could be made. But if you kind of mix that and had the overflow mixed use room that you could use for when you don't have a big crowd, I think it gives us some versatility, and I just kind of like that layout. And it gives us the ability to have a nice council chambers that's not taking up a massive amount of space, because you can do it in other ways that gives you more flexibility and use of the building. In terms of finishes and stuff, I would agree. I think with kind of what Dean was saying with the philosophy of it, I liked it. I think there's some stuff that could be achieved with a similar look, with maybe a lower maintenance cost or lower upfront cost, without a significantly different drop in quality. Trying to remember some of the other. I did like kind of how the building flowed, how the administration areas worked there. Trying to remember, did we go to their PD?
They just had the sheriff.
Okay, then it was a different one I'm thinking of for that. I don't know if we want to get into that at all.
Yeah, I wanted to focus on, I'm really kind of trying to split it up, because we chose these two sites, because one was very much focused on how the city staff works and the council spaces, and then the other site was very much focused on public safety. So, I mean, we didn't even walk through the city hall workspaces. Part of it was time, but part of it was frankly, it's not
Old,
great,
isn't it?
or what
Yeah.
we want to do, so
Yeah.
we don't waste time.
The one thing that I missed, Jay, unless somebody else saw it, pointed out to me, but there was nothing related to what Chanhassen was. You know, like, we've got pictures out here of these kind of things. I didn't see any of that. So if that's
The one thing I saw
negative.
that dealt with that, they had a really nice tapestry made that was basically a topographic map of their city. It was in the main hallway. I don't know if you noticed that as we were going through, but it was pretty cool. I actually pointed that out to one of
I
them.
saw that there, and then I saw it in the work session room is where
Yeah, they had the
they
map
had
on the wall.
they had
And
the
this
big
gets
map on
almost
the
more
wall.
into decorating it after the fact, but I know like the three of us were talking a lot at a few of the sites when a lot of offices would have like a really cool old plat map that they'd frame, and they'd put like in every office, but it'd be like, one would be like a floodplain map, one would be a zoning map, one would be a historical map from 1900 or whatever, like just different cool maps in every room or every area that were a different kind of view of the city. again, it's decorating. It's a bit down the road, but.
Thank you for that feedback. A couple things that I wanted to share, and I was actually talking with somebody about this. So Chanhassen is a very different city than Corcoran. And I'm friends with their city administrator, and I spent a lot of time with her at the rink. So our kids play together. So we've had a lot of conversations about the wheres and the whys of some of their choices. And so similar, and I love that you brought this up, the identity of our community needs to be reflected in the design of our
Yes.
facility.
I have a question for you, Jay.
We're being very intentional about that. Yes, sir.
Given that you know their administrator, do you know why they have the balcony outside the chambers, what they use that for?
So they had a vision for being able to activate that for public spaces. Well, we actually have the design here, so Trace.
Yeah, a lot of that was creating opportunities just to step outside.
Gotcha.
It wasn't one for the public on the upper level.
Okay.
But it was a chance to step outside, get some fresh air, maybe the
Yeah.
council meeting, you need a little fresh air or something like that. Also just to step out and sort of look at the city
Mhm.
from an elevated position rather than
Gotcha.
just on the ground.
Gotcha.
So it's serving multiple uses, but we have the big porch on the senior center,
Mhm.
and that is actually fronting the main trail that goes through that whole
Yep.
site, playground, all of that, and then the front porch on the street.
Gotcha.
street front. So, and they're going back and forth about furnishing or not furnishing various ones to see.
Gotcha.
The senior one has some furniture in it, but I think they may add more.
Okay. Makes
The
sense.
one off the council chambers, they've been thinking about it, but they're not sure.
Mhm.
People have stepped out there, over time. And then the one down by the street on the front of the building, they're sort of kind of undecided on that one.
Gotcha.
Right now as far as furnishing, it's just places to sit.
Gotcha. I mean, that makes sense having a
Neat
place you
ideas,
can
neat places.
get some air. I could see that like primarily being used as something like could do a cool tree lighting thing there during the holidays and stuff like that. But maybe not, if we were to do something like that, maybe not quite the extent of it. Because I feel like, especially in Minnesota, there's certain months that you're just not going to use it.
What I wanted to identify in terms of the difference, in terms of the characters. So she has spent a lot of time working in that community, and she lives right adjacent to that community, so she has a really good pulse.
Mhm.
And then there's been a lot of discussion and collaboration in terms of developing that concept, a lot of engagement. And so some of the things that they wanted to do is they want to be visible and accessible. Those are two things that I remember her talking about. I think as we're looking at this building to differentiate, we want it to reflect our values in terms of our heritage and in terms of our value of natural spaces. But Corcoran is very much a function community. Like we do things the way that we do it because it makes sense. It's practical. And so, like I think about the tapestry that Councilmember Nichols knows. I've talked with Lori about that. It's absolutely beautiful. It was relatively expensive. It was commissioned just for that. So it was designed just for the city. When I saw that, what immediately went through my mind is, that's cool, and I can't think of a single Corcoran resident that would be excited about spending money on a tapestry like
Right.
that. So I think that's indicative of the differences of our community. We would rather have a historic photo.
Speaking of, before I forget, just because you mentioned it, I know the North Hennepin Pioneer Society, that school group, they've got a bunch of new old photos they want to get to us. So maybe we should reach out, just in general, for it's here or there or wherever, just to have.
I'm always happy to sit down and meet with them. I've met with a couple different people.
I think Bonnie has
Okay.
access to them. She bent my ear about it last time I saw her, so it'd be cool if we could get those.
But that's an example. You come into our chambers and these are pictures of spaces in our community. They have a map,
Mhm.
and then they also tie back. I mean, there's some beautiful things that they've done. We want to connect differently, and we're intentional about that. So it's important for them to understand that as they're helping us design this space. A couple other things that I want to say, and staff hold me accountable for this. Some differentiations is they assessed where their highest touch points were with the public, and that's where they located those staff. We've had a similar conversation. So on the ground floor, they have different people on the ground floor, different departments, than, as we've discussed it, we would want. So the way that we've kind of reframed it is internal services and external services. So internal services, the how the sausage is made, and the external services are the presentation of the sausage to the public. And so for us, that puts community development, engineering, utilities on the ground floor, and then all the administrative departments would be on the upper floor. What that lends itself to as well is an egress route out of the council chambers, if we're able to put that, then that can go right into a workspace instead of into a hall. So then functionally, there's some potential benefit to that as well. A couple other things, they have their first touch point very accessible to the public. We have just spent time and energy reimagining how we presently connect with the public because safety is a concern of ours. They chose to sacrifice that for the sake of that engagement. I don't think that's what we would want to do. We would want to have it a single point to start, and then they kind of do triage, and then they point people in different directions. Staff very much likes the counter that's a multi-point service counter. So then once they've had that initial point, then they go down, that touch point person lets whoever needs to meet with them know, hey, building inspections, permits, engineering, you've got somebody to meet with you. That customer can go down there, and then someone comes from the back to meet with them. In the size of the counter, it might seem like it was a little excessive, but if you think about the potential number of customers that need to be served at a given time, it's probably the right size if we're building a 20-year building, because you could serve 2 or 3 customers at the same time at that. Something that they were really intentional about, and we have had a challenge in past facilities, is they designed to what they're going to need for the future, not what they need today. So as a result, they have some spaces that are not used now the way they're anticipated to be used 10, 20 years from now. So that was discussed. There are rooms that are presently collaboration rooms or different things that are intentionally the size of a future office, so that if staff needs to expand, that gets converted to an office very easily. And some other meeting rooms. So that foresight is something that staff is trying very intentionally to think about. Like, this is how we need it today, but how do we potentially need to use it as we're building a 20-year building? What are some conversion abilities? So the most stark example that I can think of there is related to the utilities. So designing a space, we looked at the vehicle wasn't there, the SWAT vehicle, but we saw the SWAT vehicle storage space. We are not at a time right now where we need that, but it's not hard to imagine that we need to prepare to accommodate that.
Or how about you were talking about the trailer, a similar type of space
Trailer
for that.
storage needs the 14 foot. So for the utility storage, we're not too far off from needing a vac jet, or jet vac, which is it? Vac truck. Which is about the same size as the SWAT vehicle. And so in the present, it becomes storage for that. And then also that vehicle, if it does get in use, it needs to be washed down. So that can also be the wash bay. And so the point that I'm trying to make as staff is having a lot of conversations about, okay, what do we need today? And then as we follow, since the public said they're in support of a 20-year building, what else could that be? What other functions could that evolve into? So we use it for this today, and we use it that for tomorrow. The reason we took you to the Chanhassen campus is because they're the best example of all of that we looked at, of proactively using foresight in the design of the facility. A lot of other folks, we've heard a lot, we wish we had, we didn't, and I think in some ways, it's just realities and constraints, but in some cases they were more focused on getting what they needed at the time than the foresight to project what they need in the future.
And that's kind of the New Hope deal is,
Yeah, you heard.
they're doing remodeling now on a relatively new
It's less than a
building,
10-year-old building.
but it looks
It looks older than it
25
is.
years old. It did, but I mean, they're doing it, but I'm excited to see what you guys have all dreamt up as staff, and then we can go from there, but I love the tours. And I've been to many places, I didn't do any of the tours before, I wanted to do this one, but I've been to many city halls, not just in this general area, but outstate and those kind of things, so.
So what did
A lot of
miss?
neat stuff.
Staff. Let's start with Brian.
I would agree. It feels like Chanhassen was very intentionally designed, intentionally set up the hubs for extra workspaces down the road. You know, I think that's what they're called, the hubs,
Yeah,
which are great areas when it's one or two people. So you can get out of an office and you can go over here and talk about whatever problem or whatever you're working on, and then in the future, those can turn into whatever office space. And I would agree with the New Hope. I think it was designed very heavily security designed because of the incident that they had. So security is very important for us also, but also it felt like that there wasn't a lot of like, I think because their community is basically built out, so there wasn't a lot of foresight into, well, we still are gonna need to expand something. We're still gonna need some, like in the garage, for example, they're like, boy, we wish, we've got all this stuff behind our squad cars. We have nowhere to put all of it. And then he's like, it's just turned into a mess. Right? So it wasn't a lot of foresight put in that. It was like, what we need for today, which is they needed to replace the facility they had. But it wasn't a lot of like, let's look to the future and have some of that space that we can potentially change what we need in the future.
Let's try and stay on Chan for this one, as for the rest of the comments.
So when we went, I didn't notice this last time, but this time I noticed that a lot of the enclosed offices had a large monitor in them. And I think for me, that would be really helpful because when I want to have somebody look at numbers, you know, or you're looking at a small screen at your desk. And so being able to pull stuff up and, you know, here's my spreadsheets, here's my charts, here's my numbers, and be able to talk that in your office without having the cube farm where everybody can hear everything would be a really nice way to be able to talk through numbers and information.
Thanks. Kevin?
I think, I'm going to steal Natalie's thunder, I think related to access and egress for like work employees. So similar, there's the PD that you saw, but even the building permit team, the engineering team, the utility teams are going to come in buddy. So having some sort of mudroom. I think we saw that this time in Chan. We didn't have that access, but some thought into how we're going to enter the building, like as a resident, but then also as a worker, right? And some sort of locker room and change room, kind of outside the normal office space. So in addition to what PD needs, it applies to other departments. So I think that's something that's critical, especially if you're multi-purpose, multifaceted facility. How do you plan those corridors that make sense, especially if you're considering expansion in the future? So.
Building off that, unfortunately, Mary, you didn't get to see this, but we didn't get to see the garage. The way that they did the garage actually solves a lot of the challenges that we've been discussing. So like light went off, I was like, oh. As far as layout, I don't necessarily like how they laid it out. I think functionally there's a way to make it flow better. But in terms of the pieces that were part of it, nailed all the pieces except for the 14-foot area. And multiple access points for an ingress and egress. But I was really encouraged by that too, Kevin, because we were just talking about that. And I hadn't seen anybody that solved our problem, and then I saw it. That was pretty cool. Natalie.
So I'll be transparent and say that Chanhassen City Hall was my favorite city hall out of all the ones we've been to. And I say that as a Shakopee resident, and Shakopee was one of the ones we went to as well. So one of the things that I really noticed this time that I didn't know last time very much was, because we've been talking about our build to line since this will be in our downtown. I really appreciated the front porch as a way to get that to the build to line instead of having like office space directly up against the street. I think that's a great way to be inviting. I think we can make that have an agrarian feel to tie back to, maybe it's not as obvious as a barn, but maybe there's ways to incorporate different architectural elements.
Yeah, gee, I love that.
Yeah.
You speak way better than me.
But I thought that was like a really creative way to still have that streetscape, help it be inviting, and I think that would be a cool element to include if we can do that on the west side here. I think as far as the staff space go, Chanhassen, I agree, had the best acoustics out of all of them. I think their ceiling, that drop ceiling they have, really worked, and it was interesting to hear that it was also like maintenance preferred that too, because of the way it was designed. They were able to access things a lot easier.
Drop ceiling, what do you mean by that?
Well, it was like they had like the unfinished ceiling
In the work area?
in the
Yeah.
staff area.
Love
Yep.
it.
So they only did sections instead of
love
like
it.
right now, if we have maintenance in here, we have to pull tiles down. It's only in a certain area, aesthetically
that.
less expensive.
And it seemed to dampen, and it seemed to be helpful to like dampen the sound too, and I'm sure there's other features as well, as I think I could hear a white sound machine too, but that, as far, I agree, not to get into New Hope, but that was one of the things we kept hearing over and over and over again, that the sound is just traveling, and it doesn't matter where you are, especially on the City Hall side as well as the police side, whereas Chanhassen, if you just did not hear what was happening on the other side, or really didn't even hear what was happening, like it just a few feet away from you. So I thought that was handled really well. I liked how the cubes, and this is a furnishing thing, but I liked how the cubes could be designed for what worked for the team. So like it could be more open if your team wanted that openness, or you could have that divider if you have a team that really, you have people on the team that really need that privacy for whatever reason. It might help with focus. And then I thought it was interesting because when we first went, the huddle room for planning, I think, didn't have that glass. They said that it hadn't really been getting used the way they wanted it to. And now they have that glass to kind of separate it. And Eric was saying that they seem to be using it a lot more now. So I thought that was an interesting lesson learned, because when we went to Shakopee, all of their huddle spaces were just like storage. It was just like, they were really unorganized, and it just had turned into a storage area. And I thought we saw some successful huddle places at Chanhassen that are actually getting used as an impromptu workspace or impromptu collaborative space. And so it's just something to keep in mind, ways to kind of corner it off so that it's not just another conference room, could still be transformed if needed into an office, but also provides like some sound dampening so that people feel comfortable having an impromptu conversation.
On those collaborative spaces, one of the things, just to remind you, that I thought was really cool that I hadn't noticed before, is there's 4 different designs at least of how they did collaborative spaces. So one had like a bench and stuff, and that was that glassed-in wall. Another one was a stand-up desk looking at a TV. So what I thought was cool about that is the teams, as it was explained, they were involved in what worked for their team. That gets a different kind of investment, and then a different appreciation in like, this is our space. And then they activate that space because their fingerprints are on it, as opposed to like, okay, we did stand-up desks. I can't do a stand-up desk with my back, so I'm never going to use that collaborative space. And so I thought that was pretty cool as well.
Yeah.
That break room with the patio
Oh,
off
yeah.
too was awesome.
You stole Nalisha.
Just saying.
I
I'm
was
sorry.
going to say that one too, so I'm glad I didn't say it. You can say it again, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Erase it so Nalisha can say it.
So, Melisha, what did you want to say?
I was gonna say the break room was very just open and inviting. Just seemed like really good. I think Natalie and I were talking about this. It's kind of separated away from like the office areas, so you actually feel like
You're going to break.
you're going to break and like you don't really, you can just take a mental break. And then just like that patio outside the break room, I've noticed just like here staff, we do try to get outside in the space that we have right now, just on those sunny days, and it just helps a lot, so.
Bigger fridges, bigger sinks.
Yeah, so they had
Just
they had 4 microwaves. Like there was so much forethought.
Yep.
Any last thoughts before we move on to discuss New Hope?
I liked their Christmas tree that they had
The
planted.
permanent, yeah.
I've got one if we need it.
So when we went to visit Fridley, one of the things that I loved about it was the vibe for the campus, both in terms of when you have people come to visit and when you have staff that are there. Minnetonka has a relatively similar vibe, and they activate the space with lots of different things. We have a complementary partner across, and so finding ways to complement that space on the southwest corner is really going to help us. I love the porch idea, to be able to, you're coming over to City Hall's house to hang out, and I'm going to listen to music across the street and then go across the street and get food as the food trucks are there. And I can hear the music as I'm sitting on the, whether it's a lawn or whatever that scape looks like. I love that vibe of invitational, like I feel welcome, and then environmental. It preserves the space. So even though you're downtown Chanhassen and there's construction, when you're on the backside, it feels like you're in a park, not at City Hall. And I think that's the kind of vibe we want to have. Like, everybody wants to come here. I'm here to do business, but I want to come here and hang out because this is a place for my family to have a good experience.
Before you move into New Hope, I'm gonna miss our welcoming area in the City Hall if and when this all happens. Everything out there is pretty special, so obviously you already probably have that incorporated into your thoughts on the new City Hall, but that's a lot has gone on in that room, and good and bad and everything in between, and that's
It's
an
got a
element
different vibe since the deer head came off the wall.
That's an element I don't want to lose, just saying.
It has evolved in really helpful
Yes.
ways. Okay, we have 25 minutes to talk about New Hope. Councilmember Nichols, can you, opening volley.
I mean, there were a lot of practical things that they had good feedback on. Having hard surfaces below the elbows was notable, and I think there's good ways you can do that, at least on the police side. I noticed in the evidence area, they had good use of the movable library shelves. I think there was an opportunity there
The
where,
card X.
yeah, you turn the wheel and then
Yeah.
move side to side.
Several that we went to did that, and I think that's
You probably want taller ones. I think there's some wasted overhead space that they could either have additional capacity or make room, have more room for the vault if they'd just gone taller with those. A lot of that was just new to me because I haven't seen that side of those kinds of spaces before, but it seemed like they had a good utilitarian approach to making sure they had appropriate spaces for storage for everything. They had
Did you get a tour in there? Sorry. I don't know if they give the same feedback, but I feel like for every location that we went to, they had some good evidence rooms like that, but the feedback we got from every chief or whoever was getting evidence tech, whoever was giving the tour said, we were doing it over, we would have done this bigger. Every single time, even the biggest one said exact same thing. So,
Yeah, I was speaking more about like lockers for officers.
Gotcha.
I kind of moved
Gotcha.
on past the
Sorry.
evidence part.
Gotcha.
I think there would be, to the degree that it's possible, having some of the shared conference room type spaces, if it's legally permissible, trying to find some synergy so that the PD can use some of those spaces as well as the more professional administrative staff. It seemed like in New Hope they were very separated. Like there was very, almost like a dividing bulkhead in the building between those two groups. Maybe that's necessary. If it's not necessary, there might be an opportunity for some synergy and maybe some shared spaces that could provide some saving. To get some more mixing of the staff, which may be related to why they didn't get good feedback when they were sharing the workout area.
Yep.
So one of the challenges is you have to decide where the CGIS environment stops.
Yep.
And they made the choice operationally to have all of their operations under the umbrella of the CGIS environment, but for the gym, the fitness center, one of the challenges that we're gonna have is about the garage. Is that gonna be, and that's why I was asking the questions about the CGIS environment, just practically speaking, that's an expensive bill, and so, and what we're gonna need in 20 years is not what we need right now, and so how do we activate that space right now? So maybe having a shared space and moving to a non-shared space, that's why I was asking the CGIS questions. There's benefits to us, well, I'll just be really candid. The way we operate now, we're CGIS compliant. We are CGIS compliant. And we have some spaces that are activated in ways that as we do a new space, we probably, there's an acknowledgement recognition that it's circumstantial. But like our EOC space becomes a lunchroom, that's probably not, it should be everything that has a badge on it. Unless you've done all the CGIS training, you shouldn't be in there. We've moved the CGIS barrier over to the admin section, practically speaking, when you walk into where they're at. But there are operational considerations, and we're having lots of conversations about, there's even been discussions about, do we just do a police department? I think what we've experienced with putting Public Works out at 19, we have some serious lessons learned on how that has been a barrier in terms of building a sense of team, in terms of the collaboration that's necessary with a team our size. We work lean, and so that utilitarian perspective. There's probably some more ways that we can think about, like training spaces, conference rooms for collaboration. That's helpful feedback, but there are serious constraints on the CGIS environment.
I'm sorry, what were we talking about?
New Hope.
I like to drive through as far as dropping off of
The Sally Port.
the Sally Port. I like the evidence area and such. Again, kind of the same conversation. Bigger is probably necessary to grow into. The workout area and the rubber floored area bigger. What was that? That was training. What was that?
Mat room is what they call it.
Mat room?
Yeah.
The padded walls.
Not to be confused with this Matt G mud.
Bigger. I love the collaboration space for the officers and their cubes, so to speak. The comments related to the cleaning, those kind of things, showers, those kind of things, absolutely. And I'm not sure, I thought they had showers. But I think the addition to that would be washer and dryer close to it so they can wash and dry their gear that may be blood soaked or whatever they went through that moment, at that moment and stuff. So a really well thought out locker area, space and stuff. I'm old school, I'm not so sure a universal locker and then everybody going to a changing room to change is convenient, but that's you guys and gals making that determination. Equipment storage, those kind of things. Ammunition storage, all that. I didn't like the fact we stepped into the lawn and the back door is open and there's multiple cases of ammunition sitting there. It just makes me cringe, and I know how hard we work at it here, but I'd really like it so that everything has a place and everything is in its place and we don't have all those storage things and such.
So if I can speak to that for just
Yeah.
a second, it's important to note that of the people that were with us and us going through, that SWAT room is a secure space, so it's not just CGIS, but it's extra level. So to the point that the chief was making, that he doesn't even have access to evidence, same is true for that SWAT room. The captain, Pete, that was giving us the tour, he's their senior SWAT guy. And so as he's opening that up, we saw things and got to walk through things that a lot of their officers don't have
Okay.
access to.
I
So operationally, you know, it's on a cart because if they need it, they're grabbing it. And so I just wanted to point that out. It kind of like, oh, everything should have a place and should be a little bit tighter. Those spaces often look like that because when you're coming in, you're grabbing what you needed as fast as you need it, and you need it all accessible. And that's why that whole room is locked down.
Okay.
Nobody can go through unless you have the secret squirrel code.
The office area for the administrative side of the police I thought was great. The big comments related to the walls are thin. We gotta make sure we take care of acoustics related to that kind of thing for privacy. Everything else, the debriefing rooms or whatever they were called when we came right in, I think those are important. The booking area, all of that stuff was pretty tight, I think, at New Hope, wasn't it? Those are all pretty standard. Not a whole lot of glitz and glamour there. It's just the basics, and I think that's all stuff that's needed.
Yep.
The parking garage was great. I'd rather see a lot more usage of a controlled area. I know we're talking about outside fenced areas for staff and everybody to park outside. Underground parking is and can be expensive, but the comments related to the in and out garage, in one, out, no backing up is huge. If we do get an underground type deal, it'd be nice if, in my mind, 3 doors. One door is the in and out where you drive in, close the door, you do everything you need to with the questionable suspect, and then you go out the door into the parking garage, and then out maybe another door, and then the actual garage itself has 2 doors, an in and out door. I'm getting way down into the detail and such, but the city council chambers I thought were a lot more conservative at New Hope. I liked the room across the hallway. It would be nice if that could be adjacent and attached a little bit better. So if there are larger groups, you could open it up and everybody is part of it. Like here, we've had this full, and then we've had many people out there. You put up a wall of glass and stuff, we just lose a little bit of feel for whatever. So if that can be done, I think that's a good deal.
Thank you. Mayor?
I don't know that I have much to add. I don't remember their council chambers particularly.
That's the one that you had, we had the discussion about the shooting that happened in that room. And so that one was designed like this, and then you had the conversation, everybody's seated here, it's relatively small, and then staff is right here with a small podium off to the right. And then there's the hallway, and then here's the community room that had all glass in order to look into it. There was an egress behind the wall that led into
That was
storage and other stuff.
really smart, back behind their council chambers.
I have a vague memory of you and I being kind of like, this is too small. Like,
Yeah.
it was almost, it felt smaller than this room, honestly.
Yeah.
The council chambers, yeah, bigger, yeah, but
Yeah,
that height and everything else at Chanhassen,
yeah.
yeah.
Anything else, Mr. Mayor?
Not that wasn't covered, I don't think.
So a couple things that I wanted to talk about. One, there's a lot of post-required training that we're finding ways to do it. But what was brought up in the discussion with Pete, who's one of the primary trainers, is as you facilitate training in today's environment, there's cost savings when you can host the training. So you bring the trainer in, and then you get freebies. First 5 people are free for your agency since you're hosting it. They can't host training because that mat room is not large enough, in order to accommodate them and others. And so it would have to be a little bit larger, not a lot larger, but a little bit larger. What he didn't talk about in there too is some of the other training that we need to do that can happen in there. So as we talk about adding technology, both in terms of virtual and other experiential training, even taser training, those things can happen in there. They didn't highlight the storage there, but then that storage capacity adjacent to the mat room becomes really critical in terms of how you can convert that space for multifunctions. The danger in doing multifunctional training in there is the surface that you're doing for the mat. You have to be really intentional that you're not having problems with that. The Sally port, we really wanted, staff wanted to make sure that you saw that. We don't have that ability. That really hinders us, not every day, but operationally when we have situations that necessitate that. And even in terms of how we do booking, we put our officers at risk with the present way that booking happens, and it's not a good situation. That's something that we need to resolve, and we don't have any space to do that. What are the other things that they do not have a range? So we looked at a couple other facilities that had ranges, and the range conversation, you know, how you design a range in today's environment, it's really important that it have the ability for us to pull a squad in so that you can do realistic training. So that means a minimum of 6 lanes, probably 8 lanes is better. And then the different types of weapon systems that we use, a 25-meter range is good. It's better to have so many lanes at 25 meters and then a couple of lanes at 50 meters, because then that facilitates multifunctional training that we need to do. But that creates some different barriers that we've been talking with them about. But that's something that you didn't see today. Where the officers were at, I think that Chief Gottschalk would tell you that we preferred the Rosemount version. It gave the vibe of what they did in Rosemount, but the way that the Rosemount area was laid out was really helpful in terms of growth potential. So it's laid out in a way that you can grow. As you saw, all of their spaces where everybody gets a desk, they're not quite at capacity. I mean, they have a canine desk right now. So us, in terms of intentional design, designing those spaces so that they function with our shift philosophy and they function for the growth capacity. The shared offices for the sergeants that they have, we liked the model that they had in Rosemount better, but it reflects the philosophy of having a shared space. The break room, while it was functional, I think you heard him say that it wasn't, there's some things that needed to happen differently there. And the reason the break room is pretty important is you got to remember officers are there for a 12-hour shift. And so potentially 2 meals or more, depending on when they hit in the cycle, when they come in, or do they have to stay afterwards to write reports and stuff. And so having a space like that, we need to be intentional about how we design that. One of the things that caught me this time is it's not the ready room, the roll call room. The roll call room was a little bit larger than I remembered. From my head count, I think it could have accommodated 50 plus people when I looked at chairs. And the chief said that that was more than sufficient for them to not only do the roll call responsibilities, but also to do some training. He said that they do some collaborative training, but back to the point of if we bring trainers in, you get savings. And so if your agency has grown to a point you only have that capacity. One of the things that we've been thinking of, they do not have an EOC. And we have had an EOC. It's been activated just since I've been here a couple times. And so it's important that we have an EOC. And our EOC currently also functions as a training room. And so when you talk about multi-functions that can also be available, that's a great example of a space that I think can do that. We didn't see an EOC at New Hope, so that's an important distinction. They have some things that philosophically we have to think about for the future. Do we create space for that? So their community relations, they have full-time, and then you saw the storage space. There's a lot that's happening there in terms of community relations. Right now, that happens, our officers are doing that as additional duties. As the department grows, do we need to carve out space so that that's a dedicated space? And there's a boatload of storage related with that we have to consider. The fitness room, I liked the lockers instead of locker room for employees, because they can go around the corner, and I don't know if you looked at them or not, there's changing rooms there with showers. And if I'm going there at the end of my workday, go and change my clothes, put myself in the locker, do my workout, and grab my bag and go home, it lends itself well to that. The type of space that it would take for the number of employees we're projecting to have a locker room for all of our non-PD employees, that would be a pretty significant space. And so having a flex space that people can use it, I hadn't noticed that before. That was something that I noted this time. But it, also the location of the wellness room. So the wellness room, to go back to Chanhassen, adjacent to the break room, I'd be interested to know how staff felt about that, the wellness room adjacent to the break room. Was that at Chanhassen?
I didn't mind it. I think, again, the idea that you're stepping away, so especially if you're needing a wellness room because something's happening where you're stressed and you need to step away, it's nice to be able to kind of get away from what's maybe causing the stress so that you can collect yourself and then go back. I think I could see some benefits too, as far as like using it for new mothers of having like not only the fridge in there, but potentially other places to refrigerate stuff. And then just like, I think it makes sense, I think, on some level, especially if it's the idea that maybe separating some of those spaces from the work area so that like either it's a way for you to decompress, or if it's like people are truly using the break room to potentially have like I think they had, what did they have?
Cribbage.
They had a cribbage on the table.
Yeah, so you know, and maybe people are getting a little rowdy and you're away from the rest of the staff space, but you're able to have that carve out. So I didn't hate it, especially if the insulation works well for it.
The reason I'm bringing that up is because that was a shift in my mind when I saw it this time. I candidly was thinking about a wellness room near the fitness center for a lot of different reasons. But then the reality of people are working out and it's loud and they're dropping weights, that's not going to be the respite place that you might need in going into a wellness room. So that was a shift. That's what triggered the wellness. And then the last thing that we didn't see at New Hope that's pretty important to current operations, especially for our officers if we have inclement weather and they can't go home because they're coming off shift and it's just dangerous for them in driving conditions, or they have to, coming off shift and they have to be at court in the morning. Several other agencies that we looked at have what are like wellness room plus, so like a single bed with a wash basin, so that officers can get the appropriate rest that they need if it's required that demands don't allow them to return home. And we have a lot of officers that have significant commutes, and so I think it's important for us to include that in the equation. I mistakenly, and I use that word intentionally, was thinking that we could co-use those sleeping rooms and a wellness room. After seeing that wellness room by the break room, I don't support that idea as much as I did before. I think having those sleep rooms on the CGIS side might make sense because of the flow operationally. Those are my comments. Brian?
Nothing really. I think one thing we're taking away from the community relations officer, having that extra space in their office. You did touch on that. I think that they did intentionally separate admin from the patrol folks. You know, they had the locker rooms and stuff in the middle. Patrol folks kind of over there, they're coming and going up and down the stairs. But, you know, admin and office staff are on the other access from the police department to a conference room, which was the first thing we saw. People can come in from the outside, and PD, I like the interview rooms outside the hallway, but it'd be great to have that interview room, kind of like a conference room, so you had a door from the PD. Hey, come on over, let's just go to this room right over here, and we'll meet you in there, or we'll talk in there. You know, that, it functions the way they have it, but it'd be nice just to be able to walk in and help it. Having that conference room, Medina has one, and West Hampton has one, and we use that a lot. It makes a lot of function. What else? Other than a lot of the spaces, they said they just wish they were bigger.
To build off of something that Ryan just said, conceptually what we've been talking about is having the admin section on a second floor above the other functions. So similar like internal, external. It saves us on footprint, but then also operationally, it might make sense. So that was an idea that we've been trying to figure out how to make that flow well. So there would have been an additional set of stairs going up to the admin section.
The only thing that I didn't hear mentioned yet is that they struggled with their interaction with the public, with passing papers in between that bulletproof.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. Kevin?
Just a couple more kind of maintenance perspectives that they really seem to struggle with the landscape architecture elements, so the rock outside the building, so not necessarily workspace, but those things matter and can cause issues later, so that was a big emphasis from staff there. And then just the distinction between the two, Chan hired custodial, you both outsourced custodial, and so that's something we have to figure out, like what makes sense for us and who does it, especially with proximity of our public works team that has some limitations.
Now New Hope is going into.
Yeah.
Is that what
Yeah,
they
they said
switched?
that, yeah.
Oh, okay.
They said that they.
Well, I
yeah.
had, okay, so I heard that, but yeah, that they were external, now they're going internal, so maybe those are some clues, they're, again, not workspace things, but custodial services and timeliness have a huge impact on the effect of the culture and the public perception, so things to think about as we move forward.
So to build on that, not as great a need with a newer facility, but as someone who had 24-hour custodial in a facility, when you have boiler issues or other types of issues, having someone on site that can address them is pretty important. Natalie?
So I don't know how much you guys were, I'm sorry, I was having blood pressure issues, so I had to leave about a half hour, because I don't know how much you guys looked at the city hall side, so.
We didn't at all.
You didn't at all, okay.
Didn't bother.
So, the only thing I would have to add from the city hall side is that the same sound concerns the police had were very much echoed with how the staff side of the city hall, or non-police side, and they had this idea of having like offices, like having a hallway of offices, and then this open space, and I guess sound just traveled through. That was a common complaint throughout that tour, that hopefully we can learn from. And then, just a fun note, both community rooms in Chanhassen and New Hope have a piano, so hint, hint. But other than that, I don't know I have too much to add. The council chambers, while I think maybe functional, I just think it's a little too small, so it's hopefully something in between Chanhassen and New Hope. But I do like having an overflow room that you're able to look directly into the city hall chambers. I like that, continuing that idea in our design.
Okay, Nalisha?
I think New Hope mentioned that each of the patrol officers had a desk, like a dedicated desk. And then they mentioned something about the elevator, but I can't remember what they said now.
Maintenance headache.
Okay, yes, there.
Yeah, we have to have an elevator, and elevators are a headache, and so the fewer elevators that we can have, better for us.
So, okay, so the headache in New Hope, I think at Chanhassen, they were talking about how that theirs actually were pretty slick. But,
In terms of being able to access it public and,
okay.
yeah,
They haven't.
yeah. They just started in September, yeah.
Fine.
Yeah.
Need a
So,
good
Mr. Mayor, yeah,
maintenance
Councilmember
program.
Varencap needs to go.
Need a good maintenance program for elevators, once every couple of
Are you buying an elevator
I
company?
have had experience with elevators at previous jobs and stuff, and the more maintenance, the less headaches, just saying, more checks. Thank you, guys. I do need to bug out. Thank you all. This is a big step, but I think I said it to Jeremy. I'm excited to see what you all guys come up with, guys and gals come up with as far as a design, and then that gives us an opportunity to add things maybe we missed. But great tours.
Thank you very much for coming.
Please thank both groups again for letting us come.
Thank you.
You bet.
Mr. Mayor, with our remaining time, if it's acceptable to you, I'd like to turn to our architects and see if they need any, if they have any clarifying questions or feedback that they'd like to provide.
I'm gonna say one more thing. Barn light doesn't mean make it look like a barn. Some timbers, accenting, those kind of things. I'll settle for something like that. Thank you.
Big weather vane on top.
It definitely needs to have a windmill and a silo. No. So, Michael? Yeah, Trace?
Yeah, I think we've been evolving, building program locations on the site, just to kind of bring you up to date. And it's a process, it's kind of a process, almost a discovery process, because some things make sense relationship-wise in one scheme that don't work in another scheme. So we're iterating and iterating and iterating, and even from our meeting on Wednesday, we've already got kind of an update. It's a great site, but it's also challenging because of the grade change. It's a great site. It's a great site. No, but I love the woods. I love the fact that it also engages that civic, the band shell and everything. That's great. And the whole notion of engaging stuff beyond the site, I think, is a real great opportunity. And I love hearing the feedback about, telling Corcoran's story maybe a little more directly and a little less abstractly. Like Channing was kind of doing it a little more abstractly, but and also just kind of getting to know you all better and hearing what matters. Functionally, we'll get it right, but again, it's going to very much be shaped by site issues, and that's just the facts. So it's a dual-use facility like New Hope, but New Hope had the benefit of a flat site, and you could just sort of, and a lot of area. We have a good chunk of area, but it's not flat. So that's going to be our sort of bigger challenge. But I'm excited about this project. It's going to be a unique one, a real special one. So I know.
Any last thoughts, Paul? Okay. Well, I guess next steps, Mayor and Council Member. So we're continuing to meet. I forget, when are we scheduled to meet with council? Is it? I can't remember the date. I think it's the second week of July is the work session. Yeah. And so, again, just a reminder of why this matters. In our open houses, we've had a lot of questions about the cost of the facility. We can't determine the cost until we've identified the scope. So at this point,
And the external potential funding.
in other
We have
potential.
things that we don't know this way and this way until we can get some, idea of what each of those will be.
But what we do have that we know for sure is that we put a placeholder at some point in the last 10 years of $50 million beginning in 2027 or end of 2026. And so we've been using that as a not-to-exceed amount. And so presently in the design, to stay within that threshold, BKV is working with roughly a a $37 million placeholder, and then there's additional soft costs that go on top of that, roughly 8 million plus. And that keeps us below that threshold. And we did see the Chanhassen build. It was in roughly a similar bracket, and they didn't have a police department, any of the training requirements that we talked about. And so that becomes the challenge. Any ways that we can find ways to activate spaces continuously, multifunctionally, with a forward-looking foresight on how it can adapt with emerging demands, we're trying to do that. We don't want to build a space that never gets used. We want to build a space that will get used immediately and then can be adapted or modified as necessary for future use. That being said, I think that concludes what staff and our consultants have for you today, Mr. Mayor and Councilmember Nichols.
Thank you.
And any last comments or questions from you all?
You mentioned we call it a roll call room, being a potential overlap with an emergency operations center.
No, I want to be distinct with that one.
Okay.
In terms of a training room. So I think it would be too large, the EOC demand that we're going to have in terms of a space, roughly 1,000 plus or minus square feet, is larger than we want for a roll call room. And then also accessibility. The roll call room needs to be in the CGIS environment, and we need that EOC to be in an environment in which non-CGIS people can access it, because there's people that are coming from the public during an emergency that can't be in the CGIS environment.
And roll call on EOC, if EOC is functioning, roll call is about them going at the same time, right? It's shift around, or shifts change.
I must have misheard, sorry.
Yeah, I may not have communicated well, so thank you for. So on the EOC point right now, $2 million in congressionally directed spending has been requested through Senator Klobuchar and Senator Smith. It appears to have made it through all the gates, and it's looking very optimistic that that funding will happen. And so that's super helpful for us to earmark that. And then what are the other ways that we can use an EOC functionally that can be disrupted, right? So we haven't talked about this, but maybe that can be a community room. And so it can function as a community room until we need to say, sorry, public, you can't come in here because something's happening. So that might be a possibility.
It's very frequent, Jay. Maybe you see community room training in service as well as outside agency training and EOC all work together.
So the advantage of that is if we're able to do it is then congressionally directed spending is helping us get a pretty darn nice community room in terms of activating multifunctional spaces. Alas, we've been asked about potential collaborative partnerships. We do have another agency that is potentially interested in operating out of our facility. We've been not having a lot of, if we had gotten the state funding, that would have been like a no-brainer, because we're having to build excessive spaces. With the present constraints of the budget, my questions for them is, what do you bring to the table? And so we haven't talked about that in terms of programming, because it would be spaces that would be a 5 to 10 year use that then we'd need for future expansion. So it would be adjacent to the police department. We don't need those spaces because we don't have all those officers or that function yet, but we'll see how that shakes out. The school district has expressed interest in doing something on that site. In our present program constraints, it doesn't make sense to do that in this. That will be a future someday cool phase for us to consider when we actually have a school, when that time should happen. I'm not aware of any other collaborative partnerships. Crazy idea is we keep having a problem trying to attract commercial businesses. So I worked in a city in which the city built and owned a space and then contracts it out. So the Chaska Curling Center was built intentionally in a way that the restaurant that's there, the city owns everything in the restaurant, for the most part. That makes it really easy for a leasee to come in and operate it. And as a result of that, we were able to cash flow that facility in the first year. Most restaurants don't start cash flowing for 2 to 5 years. But that was able to happen because they didn't have all the overhead. The city took that risk. I don't see that Corcoran is at a place in which we have the appetite to take that kind of risk. But I just throw that out there as a consideration for other big ideas that can attract other partners that will activate the space. Yeah, a coffee kiosk. Or we can put a plug out in the parking lot and we can have a coffee truck out there for the first 5 years.
Jay, can I throw out a crazy idea? You know, just thinking of, just hearing you talk about the difficulty in attracting business, you know, it doesn't necessarily happen as part of a civic, city hall, police station sort of thing, but a lot of communities are creating business incubator space.
Mhm.
That can be another, you know, space to provide low-cost space for emerging businesses to set up shop, and then maybe they stay in Corcoran when it's time to go brick and mortar.
So 1.3 million of our 18.6 million in federal funding, in community projects funding, is focused on creating a space like that.
Okay.
And the thought behind that is some of these, we don't need them today, but we'll need them tomorrow spaces.
Mhm.
We can build them out using that federal dollars now.
Mhm.
And then as the city needs it, because we need those office spaces now or whatnot.
Sure.
So we'll see if that funding comes through and then that reframes it. But we're kind of building those spaces already for the program. We just don't have action figures to put in those spaces today. Any other questions or comments? Mr. Mayor, did you have anything?
No, I think we covered a lot.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for your time. I think this is really important work. As Trace alluded to, like, well, I'll just go back to our experience. Over a year and a half ago, we were looking at land acquisition with a vision. And it's only through the iteration of try, fail, reimagine, that we've landed on what is a much better site in terms of stewardship of dollars, and also aesthetically in terms of what it can offer the community. And so these iterations and your engagement, involvement in that are really critical for us to get it right. So thank you. And hope that my hope is that we'll be able to get everybody at the dais for future conversations, because that insight and perspective helps our consultants and staff better move in a direction that aligns with your desires. So that concludes what we have, sir.
I move to adjourn. I'll second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. We're adjourned.